So if you're going to be, a lot of the procedures that we were talking about today, I think a lot of us haven't really had exposure to, or maybe we don't do it in the fellowship. If it's something we're interested in doing in practice, what are, you don't want to for the first time try it on a live patient. What are good ways, I guess, to find resources, to learn about the procedure?
That is an excellent question. I'll just take this quickly, and then please open up, guys. I think the best way is to make the representatives in your area your best friend, and open up to the community doctors that are practicing and reaching out to, well, can I shadow this, shadow that? There are a number of courses in addition to what we're doing here, whether it be in spinal cord stimulation, vertebral augmentation, neurotomies, where they will help you get to a course and help with training that, apart from the different societies, whether it be ASIP and ISIS, which have fellows courses as well. But panel, please.
Yeah, so I think I've said this many times. I mean, pretty much everything you're seeing that I've taught at this course, I wasn't doing as a fellow. And these are procedures that you have to grow into after you leave fellowship. I think the most important thing is to kind of look at things from the opposite direction. How does industry look at you? And you want to return on your investment and what you're doing as far as your education and for your patients. They're looking at you as an investment as well. So if you want to become trained, the question is, how will you attract them to you? So I think number one, obviously, excellent patient care. You have to be an amazing physician and ally with your patients. Secondly, you have to be decent technically. So whether you're good with a very specific thing like spinal cord stimulation or cooled radiofrequency ablation, if you're good at that one procedure, trust me, the other companies are going to know about it and say, Dr. So-and-so has decent hands. He or she might be really good at Vertiflex because of that. So really become adept at a certain technology, and then others are going to take notice. And then, of course, as Dr. David said, you're going to engage with that representative, and you will probably go through a training, whether it's forced by the FDA or you choose to go to some regional meeting or to a society meeting where there'll be those trainings. And what's super important is as soon as you get trained, do that procedure within 2 weeks. If you go and get trained and you don't do that procedure in the first month, we actually have the data, you're very unlikely to ever do that procedure at all. So if you don't have those cases lined up for you as soon as you're done with the training, you're not gonna win. So definitely have that. And then once you get rolling, what I do with every new company is I give them 5 cases, because even if the clinical evidence and they tell me how great they are, if I don't have a great experience with my first 5 cases, I'm done. I tell every company that. But if with those first 5 cases, they actually mimic that RCT that I read about and the patients are having a good experience and outcome, then I'm carrying on and becoming like a #1 implanter for Vertiflex or with DRG. So those are the kinds of ways to interact with industry. The whole purpose of this meeting, we were just talking about next year, planning for next year, is really to allow you guys to engage with industry, trying to understand those conflicts of interest, right? They're all out there. It's one of the reasons you guys get, put into a glass bubble in your academic centers where you can't interact with industry. Unfortunately, that was abused in the past. But what it did is it closed the doors on opportunities for you to learn and to see these technologies and, in fact, create the new technologies. One of you in this room could create the next Vertiflex or create the new thing, but you're not getting that exposure. So it's super important to engage, but do so with the right mindset. We don't want you doing it just for the money or just for your name in lights or to become a podium speaker at some major conference. It's really for the right reason. So that's the key point there.
Excellent. Answer your question? Yeah. Please go ahead.
Any tips on...
You guys, don't forget that you have a speaker. Impress the... Thank you.
Sure. Any tips on navigating turf, conflicts from different specialties, or have you ever come across that?
Great question.
It used to be a territorial battle in spine between neurosurgery and orthopedics. Some of the more insightful fellowships decades ago merged. And now there isn't a conflict, there isn't a turf battle. What you'll find is there are always 3 or 4 different people who are doing the same thing as you, but ultimately how well you do what you do resonates. It's like that rock thrown into a pond. It resonates across your community. So be happy in the notion that competition is good. I mean, Michael Jordan was so good not because he was practicing alone in the garage. He was competing. And same with you, as you perfect your art and practice your science, you'll get incredibly good, and that name resonates across your community.
All right, anyone else want to talk about the level,
Yeah.
turf wars or stepping on someone else's turf?
I can't tell. Is it on now?
Change it over. Mine.
Here. Okay. I moved because of that. When I was from University of Pittsburgh, I left because of a conflict with neurosurgery a long time ago. So I've experienced it firsthand. The thing that Dr. Beal was saying about providing comprehensive care to the patients rather than just doing the procedure, that's a big deal thing. Because I will tell you, if you want to come to UW and all you want to do is just the procedure and do nothing else to take care of the chronic pain patients, I will do everything I can to squash you. If you want to come and you want to provide good care, I'm happy to support that. And the fellows are laughing because they think I might do that. But if all you're going to do is come pluck the little reimbursed part and not provide care to your patient, then you're not going to be supported. Yeah. If you're providing good care and excellent technical service, then you're going to succeed.
Go ahead. Mario, go ahead, Mario.
That may not entirely apply to the private practice world, but it may be more true in an academic setting. But because the academic setting is, the mission of an academic setting is provide comprehensive care. So you have to provide as comprehensive of a care as possible when you are working in a university setting. It may apply in part to a private practice setting, but in order to apply in a private practice, not to apply in a private practice setting, you must pretty be damn good. And in order to become that damn good, you may need quite some time before people are going to know who you are and send the patients just for that specific management just to you.
So yeah, I think that's a great question. And as Dr. DePinto explains, it depends on what environment you're practicing in. The setting I'm in is kind of a semi-private yet not full academic setting here at Swedish. Yeah, there are turf wars, definitely. Is it to have the same extent as the departmental bureaucracies of an academic setting? Well, no, it's not. But at the same time, there are turf wars in a lot of things that we do, whether, for example, there's going to be a turf war if you're wanting to, and we hope we do, get involved in doing vertebral augmentation. There's going to be a turf war there. And how you come about and getting yourself in front of it is doing excellent patient care, getting yourself out there, talking to the primary care doctors, and that turf war I'm talking about is whether it be with with radiologists or being with other physicians in your community. But there's always going to be a turf war, whether it be competing with another interventionalist in the community, or in some cases, some of the stuff we do may be looked at as a threat to surgeons and spine surgeons in particular, whether it be Vertiflex or some of the things we do. But it's something that if you're doing it to the best of your abilities, you're providing excellent care, you're personable, it's going to put you that much further. And you know, as Dr. Schauner was saying, is that really take on that competition, push yourself to the limit, making sure that you're providing the best care possible. And that's going to make you a better physician and allow you to rise above the rest, right?
So,
but go ahead.
Two more quick things. As I've have friends in private practice who've had the experience of they apply for privileges at a surgery center and they're denied, and they're denied because the owners of the surgery center don't want that competition, so they go to the surgery center down the road and they get the privilege of the exact same thing. Or the same thing can happen at a hospital too. Yes. If there's people that don't want you there for reasons that have nothing to do with who you are.
Yes.
Just that they don't want the competition. You can get closed out.
Right.
But just be persistent because you can find someone.
Yes. Like they want you to do a certain procedure because it's a threat to
As you were saying.
other providers in their system. So you're going to come upon this at least once in your career, at least once. You really kind of look at other facilities that you may need to do it at, and explore that. And Dr. Askew and I were just discussing some of the difficulties we have had in terms of not being able to get actual procedure approved at certain facilities. But you know what? There's other facilities that you can get those done at. So go ahead, Dr. Askew. Oh, sorry, Mario.
Yeah, so we were talking a story about Vertiflex. I applied for credentials at my local hospital, and everything was looking good until then they changed chief of staff. This new chief of staff is really good friends with the orthopedic group. And so we had this meeting, and finally all people were in place, and we're talking, and I kind of present the data and why, and it's so good, and blah, blah, blah. And their response became, well, we just feel, and I kind of like grimaced a little bit. And they're like, well, what's up? I said, well, at the point that scientific data meets feelings, I really have no point to stand on. If you're going to match my data I'm giving you with how you're feeling, then I don't need to be placated. I don't need to. It just means I can't do this procedure here. And then I shopped it around, and then I found a place, and now I get to drive to actually a surgery center that I like more. They treat me better. My patients love it. And so the other story in that, it's the center where I had been chief of IR like 6 years earlier. So everybody's not going to get along, but make sure that your interaction with people tends to be as positive as possible, because you never know when you're going to have to circle back. I circled back, and when I went to actually meet the staff and the supervisor for the surgery center, several of my old techs came out, and they just, we heard you were coming here, we just wanted to see you. What kind of impact that makes on the management is that these people wanted to see him. So it's just, again, one of those life lessons. The people you meet on the way up, you're going to meet on the way down or somewhere around. So be good to people.
Totally agree. Don't ever think that the level of niceness that you portray out to other providers and primary care doctors and community, it comes around later on in your career. So really be that nice physician that is open and communicates well. And Rama, please, exactly respectful.
Yeah, just to build off what Ezel just said, I mean, it is so important that when you have those battles, because they're going to be battles, whether it's with surgeons or other pain physicians or your hospital or your surgery center, that you do so in a smart, tactful, and nice manner, because he's exactly right. When you go through those battles, you may win, you may lose, but it's going to come back at some point. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, we took on the most difficult surgeons at UCSF when I was in academics, and they end up being the ones who still contact me today after I left UCSF. Or how when I came to my new hospital, I had to produce all the evidence and get it all approved through the VAC committee, and they were super strict, and finally they acquiesced, and now they come to me to ask about any new product. So it all does come around. You really want to demonstrate not only for yourself, but you're representing your field, your specialty, and you want to demonstrate that you're smart, you're evidence-based, that you know how to work well with others, and then sooner or later you're going to help everybody else grow. So these turf wars that exist, whether it's between surgeons, interventionalists, or whatever else, I just see them as friendships. I mean, because if from an outsider's perspective, they just see two people fighting, they're just going to ignore you. But if they actually see you guys building off each other and growing a practice and helping patients, then everybody wins.
Excellent. Other questions? Please.
So this is in terms of spinal cord stimulators. Now, in a world where there's so many similars, what guides your decision? As far as will we do will we do this company or that company or that company? As a fellow, the decision is who brought lunch today. What's the expression? So
Yeah.
what guides in your other parts?
Yeah, so it really does come down to data. I think the flaws with all of our studies, even the level 1 RCTs, are the fact that all of the authors are industry biased. They are consultants for those companies because of the expense of the studies. But nonetheless, you still have the opportunity to dig into the data and really examine how those patients might line up with your own clinical practice. So for me, I was really basing my decision on feelings up until 2015 when Senza RCT came out. And the first thing I did is, if I'm the one who's asking for data, what am I going to do when it hits me in the face and it tells me that HF10 is better than tonic? I'm going to use it. So I started using it. But for me personally, my outcomes were not mimicking what was being seen in Senza RCT. And I think many of you probably know that those outcomes just don't match up to what you saw from Senza RCT for reasons we can get into later. So I ended up switching over to what was next in line, which was Burst Yara, which came out with their Sunburst trial in 2016. So again, I went to the data. Prior to that, I was using all Boston Scientific, and even prior to that, I was using all Medtronic. So for me, it's what the data tells me. Maybe it's Saluda next year. Maybe it's Nalu the year after that. I think it's a great question to ask yourself. What is it that influences you? Because there are some companies that don't have any level 1 RCT evidence for their waveforms that are still market leaders in spinal cord stimulation. And a lot of that has to do with who you learned from, who you trained with, who educated you. And so, not to belittle those relationships, they invested a lot. Of course, you're trying to give back to them. But in my opinion, if something came out, a level 1 RCT that was unbiased and said, this is what you should use, the question is, are you going to use it? And I think the answer should be, we all should be using it, right? We should change to what we think is best for our patients.
Yeah. In terms of like my practice, yeah, it's the evidence-based medicine, but it's also the customer service as well. If that company has the best RCTs, evidence-based medicine, but their customer service from the representatives is not there, I can't get the care for my patient that I want. And that makes a big difference in practice. If they're not following the patient and giving us good feedback on how the patient's doing, and following the patient with us and communicating well with us, it makes it very difficult to get a good trial or implantation for the patient. Dr. Askew?
Just another, I think it kind of piggybacks on both of those points. Don't ever become locked into any decision. Just like he was saying, he continued to adjust the data. The data is going to change. Patient interaction is going to change. Your experiences are going to change, and the patient population that finds themselves at your door. All of these things are going to be constantly changing. And it was like the point I was making when I was telling someone I started doing arterial interventions. There were always the residents who would nick the skin first, and then you find yourself confined to that presentation, to the vessel, even though it's not the best approach. And they continue to try to make something good out of something bad. And a lot of your procedures, it's the setup. It's the setup, having the right setup, the right imaging. Those are the things, the right pre-evaluation that really kind of pours into your success. So I just became a person who, I call myself a post-nicker. Be careful the way you say that. Because I'd rather land my access to the vessel, which was most important, and then prepare the approach to it. So whatever you do in your practice, don't get locked into that this is the way it's done. Make sure that you continue to go to meetings like this, going to meetings. I love European meetings because a lot of times I see a completely different approach on how they look at things. Seeing other people's perspective sometimes gives you a little foot up, because a lot of times things that I see being done overseas, especially in IR, they're about 2 years out in the United States. And so I'm coming back and checking on things that, oh, no, that hasn't made it to the United States yet. So just don't lock yourself into any way of thinking. You should be constantly challenge yourself. Do not buy your own propaganda.
And always try to be very flexible in your thinking. When I did the pain fellowship, none of this existed. And when I did the fellowship, Some of this existed, but not all of this existed. And they did the fellowship in 2011, and I finished my fellowship in 2004. So look what happened in a matter of, what, 15 years. So what you're learning today is not exactly what your counterparts are going to learn 15 years from now. So be flexible, adapt yourself, because as I was explaining to you, with a relatively simple procedure like cervical RFA, just because someone has taught you how to do it in a certain way, that you cannot do it in any other way, because you may have a patient that may not fit the criteria that apply to you for the way you have learned. So you have, and if that doesn't apply, what are you going to do? You're not going to do the procedure for the patient? Of course you are, but you have to adjust and adapt to the situation that you're living in the moment.
A couple of different things. One is that wherever you are, there will be a purchasing department and a contracting department, which will influence your life about these things. And the mistake is to accept an offer from one of these companies that says, oh, you go with us exclusively, we'll give you a discount. You accept that and you're screwing yourself and limiting yourself and put yourself in a corner and your patients in a corner. So I think that is a bad thing to do. That's my opinion. And I've been attempted to be forced into that more than once, and I've always rejected it. And then I've managed to have we have 4 vendors approved for stimulation at UW. And it's because I said, this is what this offers that's unique, this is what this offers that's unique, this is what this offers that's unique. So I built the case for all of them to say there's something special and different about this one. And that's how we have 4 vendors approved. So it's good to have diversity available. And I told you that I do piggyback trials. You heard that from Oklahoma. They do piggyback trials where the same leads can do something else. So.
All right. Next question, please. It's very quiet out there.
To answer also to you that you asked the first question, how do you learn how to do certain things? What Ramos said makes perfect sense. If you don't have the opportunity to do any of that, try to find locally within your institution, within a certain radius, wherever you practice, someone who does that stuff. And don't hesitate to go see what they do and ask them to come to you and start to do those procedures with them. Don't be humble. Don't be afraid to ask for help whenever you need to have help. Always start to do this procedure first with somebody else's help. Somebody else's help that can tell you, honestly, I'm sorry, you're not good for this, so you better don't do it. Stick with what you're able to do. And I'm sorry, but and try to learn what your limitations can be so that you can do exactly what you feel comfortable doing and not go beyond that. But be friend with people that can do that for you, just in case you need those procedures to be done for your patients.
This is a great point. When I was a resident under Mario, he was my attending here in Seattle. One of the things he told me to do was go see Dr. Ray Baker practice pain. So I took a day off from my residency. I followed him, watched him the whole day. We've stayed in touch ever since. He's now the CMO of Relievance, phenomenal physician and friend. It's really important to connect with those who are doing these procedures, like us, all of us. We give you our emails and phone numbers because you might have a question. Oh, I heard about this new procedure. What do you guys think? Is it the real deal or is it BS? So definitely stay connected with the people, maintain those connections. They can help get you trained up. They can invite you over. I have people come to my surgery center, see me do procedures. So all those opportunities do exist.
Question here and then question there.
Mainly for the private practice people, so many of us are looking for jobs right now. Are there any wisdom you have with regard to practice setup, RVU based versus, eat what you kill type of setups? Any pitfalls you think we should be looking out for, et cetera?
Sure.
I'll jump on that from the surgical side. But RVU-based is eat what you kill. It's just using a different tool to measure it. The principle that you will empower yourself when you work hard is really true. So, and the comment that folks made up here about relationships, that's really very true. So if you're going into a relationship, you want to take a look at all the participants in that relationship. And are they with each other like you would be with a family? Because if they're a feuding family and you're going to step into that, that's a different relationship than if it's a supportive and collegial. So look, and if your spouse, bring your spouse, because he or she will have eyes different than you, and they'll pick it up, and that'll help you.
Like the work RVU setting, like if you're going to work in the work RVU setting, making sure that you have, of course, the first couple of years are going to be guaranteed. And when you're working in the RVU setting, it's based upon the work RVU setting and the rate at which you get paid for the work RVU. And it has to be in competitive nature to the practicing physicians in your area that you practice, right? But yeah, making sure that the first few years are guaranteed and is competitive with a guaranteed salary of interventional.
Yeah, I was in academics for 5 years and then I went private. So I think when I think about these kind of decisions, it's really about risk tolerance. It is what is your risk tolerance? We can't tell you you're set for academics, you're set for Kaiser, you're set for private, you what you kill. But those are really the three buckets to think about. So you have your academic practices, which you're very familiar with, right? You've all gone through your training. That's what you've seen, and you can probably find a job in it. And then there's that unknown. Like, what is it like to work in those healthcare systems like Kaiser or Swedish, for example, where you have a large hospital group and they pay you a salary or maybe some blended salary plus RVU. And then there's the totally on your own, like myself right now, eat what you kill with orthopedic surgeons, free for all. What I'd recommend doing is spending time with all of those different types of entities and different geographies. If you know the geography you want to end up in, great, then stay there. But if you're not sure, check out what it's like everywhere else during this year. You don't want to waste time. I personally didn't feel like I was going to be ready for private practice coming out of fellowship. So I really stayed in academics because it was safe, it was easy, and I liked where I was at. I loved UCSF. But after some time, I kind of felt like, you know what? I have a little bit higher of a risk reward than I actually thought. And an opportunity came, so I took advantage of it, and it's been awesome. But is it hard? Yeah, I'm managing things I never thought I would manage. I mean, it's truly running a small business. The medical stuff, like teaching you guys is like the easy, fun stuff. The managing people, the managing the money, the losses, making decisions about what you're going to order as far as lighting and electricity and office wares and things like that. I mean, it's kind of fun, but it can be burdensome. So it just depends on what your background is and what you want to do. Some people like it super easy, show up to work, leave work at 5 p.m., get paid $400,000, get a great retirement. That's awesome. Like, those are Kaiser physicians. They do great. They're super happy. I'm friends with all of them. But if you're looking to work longer hours, do weekends, really, really crush it, you really want to, for some reason, make $750,000, $1 million, you can do those things, but you're going to have to look at things a little bit differently. So I like I said, I can't tell you what you're going to do. If I were in your shoes right now, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do Kaiser academics. But here I am, like I said, with 12 orthopedic surgeons just crushing it. So it's really interesting. You have to find the right opportunities, and I can't stress enough, not only having friends to look over your contracts, but getting lawyers involved, really making sure you're not getting screwed over, because we always hear about those horror stories. So really try to prepare yourself when you go out there.
Dr. Askew.
And just from a slightly different perspective, remember, this is something I tell my kids. Everything you do is setting a trajectory. Everything you do sets a trajectory, okay? So coming out, this is some of the safest you're ever going to be in the rest of your career. So one of the things that was beneficial for me outside of the contract, I didn't really have to consider a contract because I was in the military. I was going to get a major's pay no matter what. That was it. But I was fortunate enough to see that there were additional things I wanted to learn. You heard so many times up here, a lot of the things that we're doing in set practice are not things we did in our training, our postgraduate training. So you're in a safe position now. Make sure that you consider also outside of where the trajectory you want to end at 4 or 5 years from now, one of the best situations you can have for yourself is a group of colleagues that allow you to continue to expand your training, continue to expand your capabilities, and minimize your complications. You know that when you get out and you start to do these cases on your own, it's like when somebody looking over your shoulder going, no, turn it into this way. You're going to get out there, and realistically, if you're doing enough cases, you're going to have complications. If you're not having complications, it's to say you're not doing enough cases. So consider your trajectory, yes, but also consider that you want to continue your training for the next couple of years, making yourself better at whatever it is you want to do. And from the perspective of, I've had several fellows after the course last year who said, I want to see more pain pumps. A lot of times, we have enough connections with industry a lot of times that we can kind of push some of those things. I had industry actually bring some of those people out to me. They spent some time with me. They did cases. They watched me implant. They watched me fill, empty, manage pain pumps with nurses or whatever. So a lot of times, again, use your reps to get what you want. Make enough noise that you get what you want. Because what they're playing just from an investment standpoint is that maybe you will become the next top implanter in whatever it is that they're selling. And if they see that you have good hands, they see that you have an interest, a lot of times the industry will take interest in you. I learned,
It's true.
I introduced people pain pump because I kept knocking on the door. At the time it was Medtronics. And they got me out to a course and they had me on the phone with people. I got mentors. They moved me around. And they're the reason why I do pain pumps now. So use industry to get what you need from them, but also remember, coming out, this is the safest you've been. You're gonna, next year, for those out who practicing, you're going to be looking for malpractice. You're going to be looking for some type of tail when you leave. That means that this crap's on you now. That needle goes where it's not supposed to go, and blood starts pumping out. It's on you. So make sure you continue the trajectory of appropriate training in a relatively safe environment with other people that can pour into you. That just can't be overstated.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of the elements of the employee contract that you really got to delve into and get used to recognizing, like whether it be with a hospital group, a private practice setting, or a semi-private practice setting. It's a scenario where what does the overall package look like? And at times, you're not going to know what it really is going to be like until you're actually practicing that. But looking at their 401k, for example, a lot of these, like, are they covering your malpractice, are they covering your tail? These are things you're going to have to look at in the contract. And what is the rate? Is that rate actually negotiable in a few years' time? Is it a scenario for the work RVU rate, for example? But looking at the overall package is going to be quite important going forward. And is it comparable to a scenario of private practice versus academic setting? Does the academic setting provide you with the number of employees to help support your practice or not? Is going to be important as well. Again, the overall setting is going to be important going forward. If you have any other questions and needing further courses to look at, my email is pretty straightforward. It's glenn.david@swedish.org. Please feel free to ask her any questions. And as Dr. Askey and a number of the colleagues here, mentoring is quite important in getting your first steps in that procedure done and really kind of getting some feedback on techniques and patient selection and so on. Authorization process is going forward is going to be quite important. But we have another question, and that's going to be the final question for the panel. Of course, Gary, that big guy in the cadaver lab, is going to put me in a headlock. But go ahead.
I was just going to ask a similar question, but is there kind of an early career mistake that you wish you had avoided? And what would that be?
Good question. So
I look at my mistakes as my teaching moments. When I came into I came into private practice. The Gulf War I was going, and partners were being pulled to backfill at Madigan. So the group exploded. So I looked around at the communities, and I set up offices in the communities that I thought were good places to live, and then I just let those horses run that race. And the one that ran the fastest and did the most became my private practice. And so, but each time it's a lesson, and it's an important lesson. It it allows you to make future decisions more easily because you have a trust in the inherent wisdom of the way you think. So I love problems.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the things that I look back on that were, the daggers, if you will, are things that have shaped me to become who I am right now. So looking back to my first year as an attending at UCSF, I would say that I probably didn't understand the relationships with others as well as I should have. I think I always, was so robotic about evidence, and this is the way we should do things, that I pissed off a lot of people. They put me into something. I was put in a leadership position very early on, and I pissed off some people, and it never let down for years, even to this day. But in that experience, I've learned how to be a better leader and talk to others, and even if I disagree, to communicate it in a way that's mutually beneficial rather than burn bridges. So again, I don't know if I can just tell you that. You kind of have to go through it. But man, people are hard.
It's all the stuff your mother taught you, really. It is.
Yeah.
When you apply all the stuff your mom taught you about interacting with others, playing well with others, respecting other people's opinion, I just found that's such a huge thing. I'm from Jersey, and one of our underlying mottos is violence is always an option. I guess that's a real motto. It's like, okay, that doesn't work in the military. I'm like, yeah, Colonel, say that again. It's like, what are you talking about? Say it again, you're gonna find out. Just remember, remember to play well with others. Life is, some of these things about human interaction, they're so basic that those simple things, do unto others, treat people the way you want to be treated, that just pays over and over and over. And then every opportunity you get to learn, don't belittle it. It's like right now you say run the practice. One of the biggest things I have to do in my practice, in terms of my bottom line, is we have to sterilize stuff. Well, when I was given the chance, I didn't like it at first. I ended up being, NCOIC, Central Sterile Supply, for the entire hospital. But now when it comes time to running gas sterilization, running biologics, running skin sterilization, it's a big part of what I do, and it's a big part of my margin, keeping my costs low. So some of those things that don't seem so sexy, so desirable, the more tools you have in your bag later on, those things are going to pay off for you. But the humanity component can't be overemphasized.
So I'll say two things. One is, when I was looking at the site, I was studying the academic school of private practice, so several private practice positions. I tried to visit an actual clinical environment, each one of them is care being delivered. And the place offered me by far the most money. I felt like the care that giving patients was horrible. And I tracked, and I did not accept that offer. I tracked the provider I thought was horrible, and that person that was really glad it was most. That's the first thing. The second thing is 2.5 years after out of training, I was in charge of 12 physicians and 50 employees. It was a young age. And the biggest mistake I made was not asking for it. Because I think I was freaking clue what I was doing.
Not asking for what? I can't hear you.
Mentor.
A mentor, someone to say, here's how you run a group of physicians, and here's how you run 50 employees. Here's how you do the budget. No one told me, just like, you're supposed to figure that out with your academics, you gotta do that stuff. Like, BS, I needed help, I didn't get it. So it was a big mistake. If I could redo that.
What I get from this is that if you like where you are, you may end up finding yourself feeling comfortable in that position. So always try to challenge yourself. I came to this country, I was born and raised in Italy. And I came to this country because my wife challenged me to come here. My wife is from the US. She came to me and told me, hey, I don't know about you, I'm going back home. If you want to come, and we have been married for 4 years. So if you want to come with me, you are more than welcome to come. So,
Okay.
and I came here, and I used to be a surgeon in my own country, in Rome. And I reinvented myself into this new job and into this new practice. So don't be afraid, because if you end up too cozy and too comfortable, you may end up becoming complacent, and that's the biggest mistake.
Okay. My words of advice are these, and we're gonna have to close after this because we gotta get our lab started. Is number one is CYA. Actually, maybe number one is niceness. And the reason why I say that is because at some time in your career, there's gonna be a patient where they thought you did wrong on them, but the level and interaction you had with that patient initially and during the course of their treatment is going to affect whether or not they sue you. Okay? And if you are the type of physician who is kind of standoffish, not communicating well, and generally just not a nice person to them, that's going to heavily affect whether or not they sue you. Whether they should sue you or not is not the question, but whether or not they decide to sue you or not. It really heavily depends on that. And that was the best advice that someone gave me who was practicing for a number of years in practice. Other words of advice, yeah, I said CYA because really we're in a society where, and in some states, litigation is very heavy. That things you're doing and things that you're documenting are very important because that is something that can be taken forward if put in the wrong context. So documentation and CYA. I can't say enough that, as an interventional physician, that you need to develop heavy relationships with our spine surgical colleagues. And that is a must because that is a scenario where things will hit the fan. Not if, but when. And you need a strong relationship with a spine surgeon who can help. And help on getting your patient the proper care and necessary care quickly. Okay? I can't stress that enough because in my career, you're not wanting to give the patient an epidural hematoma, but guess what? That's going to happen eventually. Okay, if you do enough of those, that's going to happen. You do enough spinal cord stimulation, something's going to happen. You do enough vertebral augmentation, it's going to happen. So developing a strong relationship with our spine surgical colleagues as well as the emergency department so that they recognize who you are, this is your patient, there's also almost a protocol of what needs to take place, an MRI or what have you, CAT scan to help make sure, is there a bleed, is there a problem that needs surgical decompression. And with that, anything else? I think we're going to get the cadaver lab started right away. Please head over. Thanks very much, guys.